Hello friends at ACVA. I hope you're enjoying Summer Camp 2020 Fantastic Beast Week. I know I have been. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my father's ancestral home, Tangier Island, Virginia. Let's take a look at some of the stories and folklore associated with Tangier Island. The biggest mystery surrounding Tangier Island is how exactly did it get its name? No one really seems to know for sure. I mean, I'm family, and I can't get the same answer twice. The most well-known story is that in 1608, Captain John Smith sailed up the Chesapeake Bay and discovered the island, which he named Tangier. History offers no explanation for why an English soldier chose the name of a city in Morocco for the island. Here's what a tour guide who's lived on the island her whole life had to say about John Smith.
A lot of people think that Captain John Smith discovered our island in 1608. It was actually the Indians long before that. A Mr. West bought the island from the Indians in 1666 for only 2 overcoats. It was then that people began to settle here. The first settlers were John Crockett and his family in 1686. And the island didn't get its name until 1713. The name Tangier originates from the word tanja, meaning Indian pottery.
When I asked my father about Tangier, I said, "Pops, how did Tangier get its name?" He said, "'Cause that's where the people who first settled it came from. You got a lot of Portuguese in you, boy." It was a prison for the Indians. And eventually the Methodists came, and that's where everybody got their name. When I googled Tangier Island Portuguese, I was just like, whoa, what are you trying to tell me, old man? Here's an example, gang. Delaware Moors are a mixed-race people living in Kent and Sussex counties, Delaware, and southern New Jersey. How they came to be there is open to conjecture. Community legend tends towards 3 possibilities. In the first, an 18th century Spanish pirate ship with a Moorish crew is wrecked on the Delaware coast. The survivors are taken in by the local Nokakoke Indians and eventually marry Indian women. In the second, when the English abandoned Tangier in the late 17th century, the English garrison is given lands in the Americas, Delaware. When they come, they bring their Moorish wives with them. There is an island in the Chesapeake Bay called Tangier Island, and no one seems to know how it was named. The third legend is of the truly romantic variety. This involves a beautiful woman and a dark-skinned slave. The woman was wealthy and either Spanish or Irish. She purchased a male slave who turned out to be a Moorish prince. They fell in love and had mixed-race children. Being ostracized, they moved inland and joined the Indians. Another version of this has the wealthy woman purchasing a number of Moorish slaves who ran away and joined the Indians. Piracy was well known along the Delaware coast from the 17th to the mid-18th century, with several recorded instances of Spanish and French pirates waylaying ships in the Delaware Bay. The English did occupy Tangier briefly and then abandoned the city in 1684. The early colonial period had many instances where women and men of mixed race were forced to make their own way in the wild, and the fact of slaves running away and joining the Indians is also well recorded. Y'all confused yet? Welcome to my world. My favorite story about Tangier Island has to be historical marker JT-91, Indian prisoners abandoned on Tangier Island. Following Paramount Chief Opechquana's 1644 organized attacks against the English colonists for encroaching on Indian lands, Governor William Barclay led further military strikes against the Virginia Indian in July 1645, taking many prisoners. On August 9th, the Virginia Council decided to transport all Indian male prisoners more than 11 years of age to Tangier Island in the Chesapeake Bay to prevent their returning and strengthening their respective tribes. Barclay's own ship transported the prisoners to Tangier, where they were abandoned. Their fate is unknown. My friends at ACVA, here's a little bit more on Paramount Chief Opechquana, because if there ever was a historical figure worthy of Fantastic Beast Week, it is definitely this guy. Talk about a warrior. Opechquana lived from 1554 to 1646. He lived in what is now Virginia in the United States. He was a Native American. Opechquana was a tribal chief of the Powhatan Confederacy. He was a much feared warrior and a very charismatic leader of the Powhatans. In May 1607, the English made a settlement at Jamestown. Opechquana stopped allowing negotiations with the English settlers of the colony and wanted to force them to leave the region. In March 1622, the Powhatans attacked the settlers and one-third of them were killed. The settlers later got back at the natives and killed hundreds of them as a way to get even with them. Some natives were poisoned by the English settler Dr. John Potts. In April 1644, Chief Opechquana launched one of the last efforts to get rid of the colonists. In 1644, forces under Governor William Barclay captured Opechquana and sent him to prison. At this time, Opechquana was somewhere between 90 and 100 years old. While Opechquana was a prisoner, he was shot in the back and killed by a soldier who was assigned to guard him. The story that makes Opechquana most worthy of Fantastic Beast Week is that of Don Lewis. Opechquana could understand several European languages, plus was very familiar with European culture. Pamunkey Indians told the Jamestown colonists that he had come to them as a noble of a far land to the southwest. This is strong evidence that he was one and the same person as Don Lewis, son of a Virginia Indian chief who was captured by the Spanish ship crew in 1561. The ship then sailed to Spain. He spent 5 years in Spain, receiving a thorough education by the priest. He observed Spanish life and customs. He learned from the Jesuits and the Franciscans how to write and also how to plan future events based on a calendar. The Creek Indians had an extremely accurate calendar which labeled each day. However, virtually all other indigenous people had no concept of days having unique labels. Don Lewis was then shipped to Mexico with a team of missionary priests, where he spent 3 years learning Spanish administrative techniques. There he observed that the native peoples had become second-class citizens in their own land. He kept his observations to himself and bided his time. He then returned to Spain, where he continued his education with the Jesuits for another 3 years. The presumption in Spain was that he would eventually become a priest. When officials in St. Augustine were ready to establish a mission in the Chesapeake Bay area, Opechquana was assigned to the team as an interpreter and priest assistant. Eventually, he was returned to his own land as a missionary and interpreter, but when he returned to his own native ways, he was severely reprimanded and humiliated by the accompanying Jesuit priest. He eventually denounced Christianity and killed his Spanish allies. I know, right? The story of Opechquana possibly being Don Lewis? That's pretty fantastic, right? The last story I got for you guys before we head over to modern day Tangier Island. Did you know the British actually occupied Tangier during the War of 1812? During the War of 1812, thousands of enslaved African Americans gained freedom by fighting for the British or serving as guides during British raids on coastal communities. Many were given the choice of enlisting in the armed services or settling in various locations throughout the British Empire. East of here, on Tangier Island, at the British base of Fort Albanon, the British trained African Americans to serve in the Colonial Marines. From Fort Albanon, the Colonial Marines, along with British troops, engaged the Virginia militia in numerous landings along the northern neck and eastern shore throughout the summer of 1814. In April 1814, during the War of 1812, British forces commanded by Admiral Sir George Cockburn established Fort Albanon on the southern tip of Tangier Island. The fort, which included barracks, a hospital, a church, parade grounds, and gardens, housed thousands of African Americans who had gained their freedom by escaping to the British. Many of them enlisted as colonial marines and received military training here. From this base, the British launched raids up and down the Chesapeake Bay, including those on Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. In March 1815, they left the island and destroyed the fort. The site is now underwater. I know what you guys are thinking. That's pretty wild, Travis. That's a lot of facts and folklore associated with such a tiny little island. You guys have heard me tell enough stories. I think it's time. So, let's take a boat ride and head on over to Tangier Island. What's up, guys, at the Ability Center? We're on our way to Tangier Island to board the Chesapeake Breeze. We should be there in a little over an hour. Not gonna lie, my friends, I'm really enjoying this boat ride. The Chesapeake Bay has some beautiful scenery and unique wildlife. It's a privilege to get to do this for you guys today. Thank you. Hello, friends at the Ability Center of Virginia. We have a special guest with us today, Captain of the Chesapeake Breeze, Linwood. Mr. Linwood, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
This is family business, so I've actually been doing this. This is my 50th year doing this. So I'm second generation. I hired your grandfather.
You hired? That's right.
Yeah.
The windmill.
He ran the boat for a few years for us.
I believe he took me on that tour. So cruise boats the only type of boat you've done, or did you used to do some crabbing?
Well, we've been doing this for, like I say, I'm second generation doing this. So but we've had 3 different cruise boats at one time.
Okay. All right, Captain Linwood, I appreciate you saying hi to the guys at the Ability Center and telling us a little bit about yourself.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, the boat ride's about over, and we're here at Dad's Family's Island. Welcome to Tangier. Life begins at about 3 a.m. on Tangier. You can only get to the island by boat, ferry, or airplane. Island life is pretty much directed by the tides, the crabs, and the oysters. These shacks you see lining the harbor are crab shanties, and the flat boats are called peelers. These shacks with docks set up on stilts are where watermen stow their gear and work on their boats and separate out their catch for delivery to the mainland. Tangier is also well known for the soft-shell crab market, a delicacy for some. When the blue crab sheds their shell, it goes into hiding to avoid predators, usually crawling up onto the shelter of the grassy shallows. This is where these flatboats are used because they float in 2 feet of water. As Tangier has hundreds of acres of these shallow surroundings, it makes them leaders in the soft-shell crab market. Hey guys, did you know that blue crabs are born only in Virginia? Some have traveled to the shores of Maryland, but most are found in the Chesapeake Bay. What's up, gang at the Ability Center of Virginia? We're finally off the boat. Let's take a walk around Tangier Island. The streets of Tangier Island are mostly houses, a few restaurants, and a couple souvenir shops. There are a few cars on Tangier Island, but most people get around on golf carts. Most people on Tangier own a car. They keep them in Crisfield, Maryland, which is the closest shoreline to Tangier Island. As small as Tangier Island is, it still found the need for two churches. The oldest church on the island is the Methodist Church, founded by Joshua Thomas. The second church on the island is the New Testament Church, which is non-denominational. Both churches are filled on Sunday morning. You'll see a lot of graves on Tangier Island. The reason they look the way they do is because Tangier Island is only 4 feet above sea level, so they need to be cast in a concrete crypt to keep them from washing away. Occasionally, the graves will break free and wash out to sea. The way my old man used to put it, that's just part of life on Tangier Island. You'll open up the door and see one of your relatives' casket floating down Main Street on its way out to the bay. I lucked out, gang. I was able to find a local who was actually quite fond of my grandfather, Steve Pruitt, and claimed me as a cousin. She gave me a ride over to the Western Ridge. I found it to be a much nicer part of the island. The yards were a little bit bigger, and eventually you got to the beach. Finally, we've come to the end of suburban Tangier for a little walk through the marshlands. This was my favorite part of the island. What can I say? I love wide open spaces. But with this much marsh, keep an eye out for snakes. I sure did. I gotta give credit where credit is due. Tangier has one of the prettiest beaches I've ever been on along the Chesapeake Bay. They dredged the bottom so there's no rocks or anything to step on, just soft sand. They still say you can find many Indian artifacts, arrowheads, and pieces of pottery along the beach. My old man always said if you want to find arrowheads on Tangier, the lower the tide, the better. The Tangier Combined School has grades kindergarten through 12. The school has 50 students, 10 teachers. On average, classes are 4 to 6 students. Each class has its own room and teacher, and half or more of each year's graduating class will go to college or join the military. Tell the people your name.
My name is James Wesley Tyler Jr.
James Wesley. I'm gonna go. That's a lot of names. I'm gonna go with James
man,
Wesley.
Go with that. That's fine.
James Wesley.
Yeah.
You grew up here on Tangier Island, right?
Yeah,
Man, tell me something. Like, what do you do for work? What do you do for fun? Whatever more you want to talk about.
man. Commercial fishing for work, mostly. A lot of people are on tugboats too. There are a lot of guys here work two weeks on and 2 weeks off up in Philadelphia on tugboat.
Oh wow.
And I commercial fish. I'm out here underwater catching crabs.
Okay.
Spring, summer, and fall, and oyster in the winter months.
Oyster, man. My
Yeah.
father told me oyster tonguing was some hard work. You a hard working dude.
Well, now we don't use the tongs anymore. We got hydraulics to pull them in for us now.
Oh, see,
Got
my old,
hydraulic wheels. Yeah.
my old man always told me I should be glad he left, or I'd be growing up with a hernia.
Oh yeah, you would have. I think most of those guys have one of those.
All right, man. What's a good man? Cause how old are you,
I'm
man?
33.
33. Okay,
Yeah.
you young. I got 10 years on you just about.
Is that right?
Man, what's fun? What's day in the life when you get to kick back? Ain't got to put in no fishing.
Dude, I got 4 kids. That's
You
what
ain't
my
got
world's revolved around. And yeah, I ain't got time for
You ain't got time
No
for-
grown-up fun.
No grown-up fun.
No
I
grown-up fun,
I got
man.
you.
Yeah,
Get to
man, I'm heading right
get
here.
to watch some Barney or something with the kids.
Yeah.
Hey, man, this is little documentaries for the Ability Center of Virginia. Okay. It's a non-for-profit for special needs adults, and I appreciate you taking the time, bruh.
No problem, man. No problem.
All right, man. Be
No
good.
problem.
Well, my friends at ACVA, I'm back on the boat, and I'm heading home. I hope you enjoyed walking around Tangier Island with me. I sure enjoyed showing you my unique family tree. I'd like to give a special thanks to James Wesley Tyler Jr. for telling us a little bit about life on modern-day Tangier Island. Now let's just sit back, relax, and much like the rest of the world, watch Tangier Island fade away.
In the deep dark hills of eastern Kentucky, that's the place where I traced my bloodline. And it was there I read on a hillside gravestone, you'll never leave Harlan alive. goes down about 3 in the day, and you fill your cup, whatever bitter brew you're drinking, and you spend your life thinking how you're gonna get away. No one ever knew there was coal in them mountains till a man from the northeast arrived, waving $100 bills, said I'll pay you for your minerals. But he never left Harlan alive. Grandma sold out cheap, and they moved out west of Palmer to a farm where big Richland River winds. Bet they danced them a jig, I bet they sang them a new song. Who said we'd never leave Harlan alive? Oh, the times they got rough, and tobacco wasn't selling, and old Granddad knew what he'd do to survive. He went and dug for Harlan coal and sent the money back to Grandma. He never left Harlan alive. Where the sun comes up about 10 in the morning, and the sun goes down about 3 in the day, and you fill your cup with whatever bitter brew you're drinking, and you spend your life digging coal from the bottom of your grave. You'll never leave Harlan alive. You'll never leave Harlan alive. You'll never leave Harlan alive.